Have you ever seen a sky so clear that you can see the Milky Way and thousands of stars in the sky? Well, I had a similar experience when I went to rural Rajasthan and I saw a sky like this. But back in the city, this is just not the case. In the city, the sky is blinded by a faint glow. This glow, what we call light pollution, often blinds our view of the sky and the stars. Now, light pollution for me has been something that I've experienced from as I grew up. When I was young, I was an avid astronomy and astrophysics enthusiast, as I am now. I used to look up in the sky and look at thousands of stars I could see. But as I grew up and as industrialization rapidly increased in my city, the number of stars decreased one by one every day. And now, what I can see in the sky is simply the image on the right. What we can see in the sky now is a faint glow, and we cannot see any stars that we used to. This is increasingly frustrating, especially because I am deeply interested in astronomy and astrophysics, and I see that stars are our only way to look at the universe, its beginnings, and what we can do in the future. In astronomy and astrophysics, imagine light that is traveling billions and billions of years, only for it to be blinded by a faint earthly glow that we produce from our buildings. That is so annoying, right? You can see it is something like this. When you look at someone who is holding a candle a few kilometers away and you're trying to see them, but there's someone else who is flashing a torchlight right in front of you. Will you be able to see the candle? No. This is exactly what happens with light pollution. Now, you might be thinking, light pollution is something that is restricted to sciences, the astronomy, to astrophysics, and research. But this is something which impacts us in many more ways than we can imagine. Let's take the ecosystems, for example. Sea turtles are an example of aquatic ecosystems. Sea turtles often hatch near beaches, and they use the moonlight's intensity to direct themselves towards the sea. But what happens is, when the beachfront lights of the beachfront buildings lead these turtles to move towards the city and towards the beachfront. This leads them to dehydrate and then die in large numbers. A similar thing happens to birds. Birds used to use the stars in the sky for navigation. But what happens is, the lights on buildings often deceive these birds, and these birds often circulate around these buildings, and then often, due to exhaustion, they also die. A major impact that also affects us humans is because of insects. Insects are great pollinators, which means that they play a big role in the food chain. Now, insects often swarm around lights and die in large numbers, directly impacting the food chain and directly impacting us. Another way that light pollution impacts us is something that you all might have heard about, the circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm basically takes in light and dark from outside, and our biology determines our waking and sleeping hours. But what happens is, due to increased light pollution, the line between dark and light is very much blurred. And this blurring of this line then leads to a disruption in the circadian rhythm. As you all might have noticed, we have increased stress levels, we are not able to focus as much as we used to. So these things directly affect us. And this also does not go without saying that light pollution every year, billions of dollars are spent on light that is simply going into the atmosphere. The light which we cannot use as humans and is simply polluting our atmosphere. Now, one of my major issues with light pollution is that light pollution simply blinds our view as humans and as innovators. Hundreds of years ago, ancient astronomers, they used to use simply their eyes, naked eyes, and basic rudimentary instruments like the telescope and smaller Cartesian systems. However, and using that, they used to create such groundbreaking theories that we still read about them in our books today. But now, ironically, our knowledge of the universe and space has increased, obviously, but our view of the stars and the sky has diminished. Now, as humans and as a race, our will to discover, our will to innovate, and our will to research is diminishing because we cannot see even the stars. And this is a problem on a personal level for many humans and an enthusiast like me. The good news is, light pollution is one of the easiest environmental problems to curb. Light pollution can be curbed using simple steps that we can do in our daily lives. Now, obviously, a lot of us might have heard about air pollution and different types of pollution in our books, and we often don't really think about these problems on a daily basis. But light pollution here is something that is not so difficult to curb, and this is something which we can subconsciously and passively help. Firstly, shielded lights. We can use lights that are directed downwards instead of upwards, so they only focus on a specific area where they are needed, so that excessive light cannot go into space or the atmosphere, thereby helping us reduce the amount of light that then blinds us of the view of the stars. Secondly, we can use warmer LEDs. So instead of bright blue colors that obviously harm the environment more, we can use slightly mellow, warmer colors like yellow. And thirdly, we all say only use lights when you can, only use lights when you need to, or only use water when you need to. But obviously, this is something which we in our daily lives lead, is something which is not very feasible to do on a daily basis. So we can simply install new technology lights, which are motion sensor lights. These lights often use sensors which detect our motion, so whenever we're in front of them, these lights will turn on and off and henceforth. So this is a simple change that we can make, and then this helps us passively work towards this problem and then solve light pollution. Now a great misconception is that air pollution is measured in AQI, air quality index, which we often see when we look at the weather, we look at different cities like Delhi, which are increasing in air pollution. But we often think that light pollution cannot be quantified. Well, that is a problem. Light pollution can actually be quantified. There's an instrument called the sky quality meter, which quantifies light pollution in magnitudes per arc second square. It is very easy to use. However, one of its main disadvantages is that it is very expensive to acquire. Excitingly, in a world like ours, Arduino boards, which are used in robotics projects, which are not so difficult to acquire and not very expensive either, can be used to create these sky quality meters which can be distributed to different communities and then help in gathering data about light pollution and increasing awareness. Remember, since light pollution can then be measured, it can also become more manageable. Now, so on a community level, these are small changes that we can make, but I have a challenge for you. Go out, away from the city, away from the lights, away from the buildings. Go out into a rural area where you can see a landscape like this, where you can see the stars, and maybe even the Milky Way. Maybe you can see constellations. And then maybe you'll realize what we're truly missing out on. And maybe then you'll realize what we need to do to bring the stars back to our skies.